Hello, I'm Troy Torres, not supposed to be working today, but here we are with Isaac Nearbubble in our studios because the Guam legislature decided to go into session today. So wait, which camera am I supposed to be looking at? This one? Sorry, I was looking at the wrong camera. So here I am with my Haribo gummy bears, my gym clothes, and of course, coffee. Where we're just waiting for the Guam legislature to get started. They just decided they moved emergency session from Monday because of then Tropical Storm Bolivar to today, and that emergency session is important. That's why we're here. Otherwise, we would have been taking a day off. I really need to cut my yard. You know, it's just overgrown. I know these are my personal problems, right? Enough about that. Bill number 164 by Senator Jesse Lujan and the rest of the Republicans will appropriate the unappropriated revenues of fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2023. Fiscal year 2023 just closed on September 30, 2023. We are now in fiscal year 2024. Now, this bill says that the legislature is going to appropriate the unappropriated revenues, meaning the legislature every year says $100 is going to come into the general fund. But in actuality, by the end of the fiscal year, $101 comes into the general fund. Then that one additional dollar, are you sticking with me? Is the unappropriated revenue of the general fund. So the unappropriated revenue of both fiscal years 2022 and 2023 will then be appropriated by the legislature if this bill passes into law to go to Guam Memorial Hospital. This bill says that this must be taken from the unappropriated revenues according to the financial audits of fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23. Here's the problem. The financial audit for fiscal year 22 has not yet been published, and the financial audit for fiscal year 2023 has not yet even begun because that fiscal year the books haven't closed completely on that fiscal year. However, the governor does have an idea, because she's the one who keeps the books, of how much unappropriated revenue came in fiscal year 22. And she has an idea, but not so strong and verified of an idea about the unappropriated revenue in fiscal year 2023. Because there are still some reconciliations that needs to happen and all that stuff, right? But she has a general idea about the ballpark amount of unappropriated revenue for both fiscal years. So yesterday or last night, hold on, because I've been holding these gummy bears. So last night, the governor sent out a news release, and she said, hey, look, everyone, I know that GMH sucks. So I'm going to take $20 million out of the bank that I've been saving in ARPA funds, and we're going to give that to GMH to fix some of its physical plant issues. And I talked to Senator Jesse Lujan, and we agreed that Senator Lujan's going to amend his bill to put a $30 million appropriation tag onto it and send that money over to GMH to pay off its vendor payables. And so Senator Lujan last night, he comes back with his own news release and he says, well, the governor and I did talk, but we never quite squared away that $30 million because I asked where that money's coming from and the governor never answered. Her administration still hasn't gotten back to me. On top of that, the governor in her release said that this $50 million, that's the 20 plus the 30 together, okay? We can send that over to GMH to fix the issues right now, but also legislature, I would like you to authorize me to purchase land from the Guam Ancestral Lands Commission for a new hospital site in the municipality of Barragata, but everyone's telling me it's more like Manilao. Apparently, it's closer to Hawaiian Rock on Back Road. And please do it in emergency session too. Speaker Therese Terlahi today says, we're not going to do that in emergency session. That requires a public hearing. I'm not going to declare an emergency for that or whatever, right? So all of these things are happening. The legislature's decided to take this step by step. And in its session, are they live yet? Is that? in its session. We're still in the Q room in the legislature. This is why I can talk so much. They're going to take up Senator Lujan's bill number 164. It has not yet been amended. I don't know if it'll be amended on the floor for that $30 million, but I'm going to guess that the legislature is going to resolve into the committee of the whole. That's where all the senators are still there. Nothing changes except like the budget chairman of the legislature goes onto a folding table that's dressed with a blue canopy thing and a folding chair behind it. And he has a gavel there below the speaker's dais. And then he's the one who directs the discussion among the other 14 senators of a financial nature. That's what the committee of the whole basically means. And now the legislature is able to call in all these other people from the administration and wherever else they want to come into the session hall. Because according to their rules of conduct, while they're in regular session, they cannot bring in people into the session hall. So they have to go into this, what's called a committee of the whole. So that's likely what they'll do. Likely they'll call in people from the governor's budget staff and the Department of Administration to explain where this $30 million is coming from. I suggested that the senators should call in Benita Manglonia, the former CFO of GMH, because she is a disinterested party in all of this. She has nothing to gain nor lose from testifying before the legislature, and she's really the only person in all of Guam who knows how to get what's called TEFRA rebasing for Guam Memorial Hospital, which is one of the main solutions to GMH's perennial systemic imbalance in its books. And also the person who knows how to do all these other things financially. The last time GMH was kind of on an okay, stable financial footing was when Benita Manglonia was there. Alas, this administration decided to fire her, and then everything went downhill from there. So we'll see where this takes us. I really have nothing else to say, so I'm going to wait in the queue room with the rest of you as we wait for senators to hurry up. They are already 28 minutes late from their scheduled start of session, but that's par for the course for Guam's legislature, who is completely unprofessional when it comes to doing its duty to the people of Guam and starting things on time. Here's the waiting room.
Is hereby called to order. The clerk will please read the call for emergency session for October 11, 2023.
October 11, 2023. Memorandum. To all members, 37th Guam Legislature. From Speaker Therese M. Terlahi. Subject. Call to emergency session Wednesday, October 11, 2023 at 2 p.m. Buenas and half a day. In light of the anticipated restoration of the island to Core 4 at 10 a.m. on October 11, 2023, the emergency legislative session relative to Guam Memorial Hospital, postponed due to Typhoon Balawan, will be called to order at 2 p.m. October 11, 2023. In light of the conditions confirmed at a recent GMHA oversight hearing and audit, as Speaker, I hereby certify that emergency conditions exist which justify an emergency session regarding the Guam Memorial Hospital. Further, consistent with the Governor's EO 2023-11 and the President of the United States Declaration of Emergency for Guam, I also certify that emergency conditions exist as a result of the recent Typhoon Balawan, which justify an emergency session. Therefore, y Legislature in Guahan will be called into emergency session on Wednesday, October 11, 2023 at 2 p.m. in the Guam Congress Building to address the urgent matters concerning Guam Memorial Hospital that are impeding or threatening the health and safety of the people of Guam, and urgent matters resulting from Typhoon Balawan. In the absence of a session agenda adopted by the Committee on Rules, notice is hereby given that all introduced bills listed at https://guamlegislature.com/index/bills/R, potential items to be placed on the agenda pursuant to motion, standing rules, and consistent with the emergency call. The daily order of business shall be set forth in Section 1.02C of the 37th Guam Legislature's Standing Rules. 1.02C, Daily Order of Business. Unless some other order is adopted by the Committee on Rules or the body, The daily order of business of I Legislaturan Guahan shall be as follows. 1. Call to order. 2. Prayer. 3. Recognition of a recipient of Imeladsan Mastaculo na Sacrificio. 4. Reciting of Inifresi. 5. Singing of Guam Hymn in Tsumoru. 6. Singing of National Anthem. 7. Roll call. 8. Call for approval of Legislative Journal. 9. Communications and petitions. 10. Messages from I Magahagan Guahan. 11. Reports of standing committees. 12. Reports of select committees. 13. Introduction and first reading of bills and resolutions. 14. Motions. 15. Legislative concurrence. 16. Consent calendar. 17. Second reading file. 18. Consideration of daily file. 1. Third reading file. And 2. Voting file. 19. Brief extension of remarks, limited to 5 minutes per member. 20. Announcements. And 21. Adjournment. Thank you for your attention and cooperation. Please see attached memorandum relative to requests for emergency session.
Situs Masi. Clerk. Majority Leader, Senator Shelton, you are recognized.
Situs Masi, Madam Speaker. Notwithstanding the House rules, I move to adopt today's legislative session agenda dated October 11, 2023.
Motion was made to adopt today's legislative session agenda. Are there any objections? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Majority Leader, Senator Shelton, you are recognized.
Situs Masi, Madam Speaker, and notwithstanding the House rules, I move to waive legislative session agenda items 3 through 6, which are the recognition of a recipient of Milalatsin Mastaculo na Sacrificio, reciting of the Inifresi, singing of the Guam Hymn in Chamorro, and singing of the national anthem.
On that motion, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We're now in item 2 of our agenda. That will be the prayer. With our Majority Leader, please lead us in prayer. Kindly rise.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit today. Heavenly Father, we come before you humbly, giving you thanks and praise for sparing us from this typhoon and our neighboring islands from any devastation. We give you thanks for watching over us, for leading us with your goodness and your mercy. We ask today that you give us your grace and your strength to serve the people of Guam, to make good decisions here in this body that are in accordance with your will. We pray that you continue to be the light in darkness, the wisdom for all age, and the truth for eternity. We give you thanks, and through your Son, Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen. Santa Maria and Kamalin, pray for us. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Situs Masi, kindly be seated. We're now on item 7, which is roll call. Clerks, kindly take the roll call.
Senator Barnett. Senator Blas. Senator Brown. Senator Dueñas. Senator Fisher. Senator Lujan. Vice Speaker Muñoz Barnes. Senator Parkinson. Senator Perez. Senator Kanata. Senator San Augustine. Senator San Nicolas. Senator Shelton. Senator Taidigui. Speaker Terlahi. Madam Speaker, there is a quorum.
Situs Masi, clerks. We're now on item 8. Majority Leader, Senator Shelton, you are recognized.
Situs Masi, Madam Speaker, again, notwithstanding the House rules, I move to waive session agenda items 8 through 12, call for approval of the Legislative Journal, communications and petitions, messages from Imagahag and Guahan, reports of standing committees, and reports of select committees.
Is there any objection to waiving those items of our agenda? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Majority Leader, you are recognized.
Situs Masi, Madam Speaker, I move that bills introduced, bill numbers 162-37LS through 164-37LS and 165-37LS through 184-37 COR, and resolutions introduced, resolution numbers 171-37LS through 183-37LS and 184-37 COR through 218-37 COR be deemed to have been given their first reading.
On that motion, in regards to the introduction and first reading of bills and resolution, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We're now on motions. Majority Leader, Senator Shelton, you are recognized.
Sedis Masi, Madam Speaker, I move to excuse senators not present for today's session.
On that motion to excuse senators not present, there is an objection. Senator Brown?
Not an objection, Madam Speaker, but again, to avoid any questions of the public about our absence, I'd like an explanation briefly as to why these members are not present for the public's interests. Thank you.
I have
Sure, Madam Speaker, I believe the two who are not present, or three who are not present right now, are Senator Perez, Vice Speaker Munya Barnes, and Senator San Nicolas. We received off-island notices for those who are off-island at this time.
Yes, and Senator Perez was here, and I received a message from her right in the beginning of session that she had to leave for care family reasons. On the motion to excuse those not present for today's legislative session, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We're still on motions. Is there any other motion? Senator Lujan, you are recognized.
Good afternoon, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much. Notwithstanding the House rules, Madam Speaker, I'd like a motion to place Bill 164-37LS on the session agenda.
Could you please read the title?
Notwithstanding the House rules.
The title of the...
Thank you, Madam Speaker. An act to provide emergency funding to the Guam Memorial Hospital. That's Bill 164-37LS. Again, notwithstanding House rules, I move to place, a motion to place 164-37LS on the session agenda.
On the motion to place Bill 164-37LS on the session agenda, is there any objection? There's an objection. All in favor of placing the bill on the session agenda, please raise your hand. Motion fails. We're still on motions. Senator Blanche, I recognize under motions.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move to place resolution number 2 notwithstanding the House rules, to place resolution number 215-37 COR as introduced by myself, Senators Telotay Legui, Joanne Brown, Christopher Dueñas, Thomas J. Fisher, and Jesse Lohan. It is relative to urgently and steadfastly requesting the Governor of Guam to acknowledge the dire and decrepit conditions that exist at the Guam Memorial Hospital and to declare a state of extreme emergency to address the unsafe, unhealthy, unsanitary, and financially challenging conditions that exist there. My motion is to place this resolution onto the session agenda.
On the motion to place the resolution notwithstanding the House rules onto the session agenda, is there an objection? There's an objection. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion fails. We'll take a 1-minute recess.
Well, I don't know what's going on over there, but those were the two things that emergency session were called for. I don't know how the rules work, whether they're allowed to like get anything else on there, but if this is the legislature just wasting our time, I mean, I suppose we shouldn't be surprised, but there's a real problem at Guam Memorial Hospital. And the legislature was the one that was all up in arms about Guam Memorial Hospital, as they should be. The ball's in their court to provide solutions, and they can't just keep blaming the governor. So again, I don't know what's going on. Did you see who didn't vote? Zach, I couldn't, from my phone, I was downstairs picking something up at the attorney's office. I didn't see on my phone who didn't raise their hand when they voted. Was it just the Democrats? All the ones on the right? All the Republicans, they were on the left, they voted yes. What is going on with the Guam legislature? Very interesting. Are we in the queue, or can we go back and see what they're up to?
We're back from recess. We're still under motion. Senator Barnett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to move to reconsider the last motion.
The last motion was a motion to put resolution number 215-37 onto the agenda, notwithstanding the House rules. There's a motion to reconsider. All in favor of the motion to reconsider, please raise your hand. Motion to reconsider passes. On the motion to place resolution 215-37 COR, notwithstanding the House rules, onto the session agenda, is there any objection? There's an objection. All in favor, please raise your hand. This is a motion to place resolution 215-37 onto the agenda, notwithstanding the rules. There's been an objection, so all in favor of putting it on the agenda, please raise your hand. Motion carries. We're still on motions. Are there any other motions? Majority Leader, you are recognized.
So just mostly, Madam Speaker, I move, notwithstanding the House rules, to waive legislative session agenda items 15 and 16, legislative concurrence and consent calendar.
Is there any objection to waiving those items on our agenda? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We're now on the second reading file. So the only item under second reading is resolution number 215-37 COR. Senator Frank Blas, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move to place resolution number 215-37 COR as introduced by myself, Senators Talatay, Gui Joanne Brown, Christopher Dueñas, Thomas J. Fisher, and Jesse A. Lohan, relative to urgency and steadfastly requesting the Governor of Guam to acknowledge the dire and decrepit conditions that exist at the Guam Memorial Hospital, and to declare a state of extreme emergency to address the unsafe, unhealthy, unsanitary, and financially challenging conditions that exist there. On to the third reading file, and I'd like to be opportunity to be able to speak to it.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, it's an interesting turn of events that we've had based on this emergency session, and in my initial request to you to provide us the opportunity to go into emergency session, it is because of the constant communications conditions and things that we've been hearing and seeing ourselves, as well as receiving testimony from not just from the patients from the Guam Memorial Hospital, but also now from the employees of the Guam Memorial Hospital. And also, you know, receiving information from other individuals who provide services to the Guam Memorial Hospital about the continuing disintegration of services that can be provided there, and the decrepit and the unsanitary conditions that exist within the Guam Memorial Hospital. You know, Madam Speaker, it's not to go without this body and in its desire and in attempt to be able to assist the Guam Memorial Hospital in being able to take care of the conditions that exist there. You yourself, Madam Speaker, provided legislation, you know, and a law that would have been able to provide them, I think it's $10 million in funding that was desperately needed to be able to pay down vendors and to repair services. If I remember correctly, if you can correct me, Madam Speaker, I think this was back in the 35th Guam legislature, if I'm not mistaken. You know, that was, what, 4 years ago? 3-4 years ago? $10 million. And then in a recent hearing provided by the oversight hearing on the Guam Memorial Hospital, came to our surprise. They acknowledged that $10 million was appropriated, but they never received it. But in the same testimony provided in a shortened oversight hearing, it was further provided that millions of dollars were still owed in vendor payments, millions of dollars in repairs were necessary, $1 million of supplies were missing or could not be obtained to be able to provide the adequate health care that our people of Guam should expect in going to the Guam Memorial Hospital. Combine that with the conditions that we've not only, some of us in the body, I'm sure it's going to be talked about by others, of the conditions, the unsanitary and the unhealthy conditions that exist in the hospital. But when you hear stories from patients as well as healthcare workers of what they have to rely on, of what they have to use to be able to provide services, the healthcare services to our people. You know, when they need to rely on rolled up soiled linen to be able to use as pillows, when they need to rely on toilet tissue and paper towel to wipe, to bathe patients, bedridden patients. When you hear of pest infestation, when you see pictures of mold conditions, not only inside but outside the facilities, that would go towards against the health conditions of a patient. While this is all happening, and then you have an administration who seemingly doesn't want to do anything about it, instead wants to continue to force an issue of having to build a new complex, a new hospital down the road from where the current facilities exist, ignoring the conditions of the current facility, and saying that building a new hospital, which is all, by the way, is not going to take another 5 or 10 years to complete, that will be the answer. The answer is needed now. It's now. Our people cannot wait. Healthcare does not stop We don't have, nor does anybody have the moratorium or the ability to provide a moratorium to tell the people of Guam, to tell people, oh, by the way, you can't get sick because you know what? The new hospital won't be ready for another 10 years. It needs to be done now. And so what this resolution is going to be able to provide, Madam Speaker, is recognizing, first of all, our responsibilities and role is in our branch of government. We don't have the ability to execute executive functions. But in our role and our responsibilities, provide the framework and the ability, the policy, to be able to move on things that is dire, that is needed for our community. That's what this resolution addresses. This resolution addresses a extreme desire and an encouragement to the governor to first of recognize the conditions that currently exist in our hospital, recognize the conditions that currently exist in our healthcare system today in our community, provide the resources that are necessary to be able to deal with this. We just recently voted down an attempt to be able to provide funding. I'm not going to get into that because it's gone. But all the while, there's still over $200 million that's sitting in what is called the American Rescue Plan funding. That could have been utilized. She's got $153 million set aside for a new hospital. We don't need a new hospital 5 years down the road. We need a hospital that can function for us today. So with regards to the financial reasons, okay, so then, this body doesn't want to take into consideration a funding source. Granted, there's a funding source that still exists. And the utilization of that funding source that we can't touch, she has that financial ability to be able to take care of the woes, the fiscal walls of the hospital. But more than just the fiscal walls of the hospital, you got to consider some of the things, the management practices and the things that have happened. One of the things that we can suggest to the governor in being able to fix this, maybe to put together a task force to be able to bring in the subject matter experts in the healthcare industry, outside of of the people that you brought in, to be able to find a new place for a hospital, which that's another discussion to be had. But this discussion today is about the physical and financial condition of the hospital and the conditions that are in. I appreciate the opportunity for the reconsideration of the vote so that we can deal with this matter. Because God help us if this body doesn't take any attempt to want to fix what is obvious in as far as a dire condition in our community. Shame on us for not wanting to push the issue. What are we afraid of? And we shouldn't be afraid. But at the same token, let's recognize, okay, I'm not telling you how to do this, how to fix the condition. There are people that are in the community, that exist in the community, that know how to be able to do this, that we can tap into, that she can tap into, to be able to start to make those fixes. It's one thing to give them money, but it's another thing to make sure that money is spent properly. And it's spent in the right places. Before this session today, I had a meeting this morning with one of the vendors from the Guam Memorial Hospital. Then I asked him, okay, how much does the hospital owe you? He says, sir, they owe us close to almost $800,000. Well, what's your aging on this? I said, over 6 months. How does a business be able to operate $800,000 owed by the hospital over 6 months? And the kind of supplies and the kind of materials that they provide to the hospital are life-saving supplies. These are things, these are supplies, these are medications that our caregivers, the practitioners who practice, who take care of the people who are at the hospital who are sick, who rely on these materials, on these supplies to be able to provide the health care that these people need. And then I asked, I said, how long has this been going on? He said, well, sir, every time, they'll make a $50,000 payment here, but then in the same token, request for us for $75,000 additional more supplies, and how are you surviving? And it goes back to a conversation that we had in the body here a few weeks ago when we had the Guam Memorial Hospital officials before us. And when we asked them, he says, okay, with regards to the vendors that you can you still get supplies from them? No, we can't because we're on credit watch. So how do you do this? Oh, we go look for another vendor. Really? How many more vendors do you have in this well before the well runs dry? And then pretty soon now we have a crisis on our hands. I'm very close to asking in this resolution not to declare a state of extreme crisis, a catastrophic crisis, because that's where it's at right now. And this is not something that we can wait 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road to be able to fix. We need to fix it now. It needs to get fixed now. And what this resolution will be able to provide is that encouragement. Governor, take a look at what's going on at the hospital. Acknowledge it, recognize it, and let's deal with this. We owe nothing less to the people of Guam for this. And as much as we want to be able, as much as I'm going to speak personally, as much as I wanted to put more force and effect in this, I recognize it's just a resolution. You know, there was an article that was put out, or a press release that they put out, the front office put out last week, saying, you know, Resolution 215 does absolutely nothing. You know what? They're absolutely right. Because if they choose not to continue to ignore the conditions of the hospital, if they choose to continue to ignore that people are dying because of the lack of medication, the lack of health care necessary, because we cannot pay for it, or because it doesn't exist, if we continue to go down that road, then yes, it does absolutely nothing. The onus is not going to be on me or on you, on us. I'm going to continue to stand here, whether it be this resolution or any other measure that it's going to take to move to make sure that our hospital is fixed, to provide the best service that we can for our hospital. I'm going to continue that effort until something actually gets done. You know, and you know what? As much as, granted, I am the first senator found on this resolution, but this is not just my resolution. This is a resolution brought by my other colleagues, my other Republican colleagues. Should we have extended over to our Democratic colleagues who want? Yes, we can. But you know, at the moment, at the heat of the moment, recognizing first off that this was not a priority in a similar legislation that was passed that was recognizing the revenues. When we saw that this was necessary, this should have been a priority, we felt it necessary to stand up as the 6 Republicans that we have to be able to push this resolution. You know, once a person once told me, he goes, you know what? Be very careful what you say when you're angry, because you may say things you're going to regret. So you know what? I've got only 3 seconds. I better sit down before I do say something I regret. But I don't regret being a part of introducing this resolution. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Blas. On the resolution, Senator Parkinson, you're recognized.
Oh boy, the legislature and the hospital. Name a more iconic duo. So, what are we doing here with this resolution? What are we trying to achieve? This resolution doesn't provide funding, doesn't start a groundbreaking. All it does is put us on the wrong direction of self-determination. Rather than asking for more autonomy, we're asking for more government, more federal interference in what we do. And it doesn't solve any of the issues. What is it that GMH and Guam actually need in terms of health care? We need to provide a basic level of care at GMH and build a new hospital. It's not either or. They are both essential to ensuring the people of Guam have proper health care. One is not prioritized over the other. One is not more important than the other. Both are of critical importance. We need to be honest about what the issues are. We need to fix the way finances of GMH are governed. Hospital financial experts need to be brought in to manage the financials of the hospital. We can't just keep giving GMH money because it failed even when it had plenty of money. We need to acknowledge that management is the problem and not money, because we have given money to GMH for a very long time and we are expecting a different result. In some circles, they would call that insanity. This legislature, we are a significant part of the government of Guam. For too long, we as a body have done nothing to address the root causes of this issue except throw money at it and write strongly worded resolutions. Honestly, the only senator in this body that I've ever seen who truly tried to fix GMH was Senator Dennis Rodriguez when he tried to privatize the management of GMH in the 33rd Guam legislature. But this body continues to throw money at the same hospital and the same management and expect different results. We need to put the blame on ourselves as a body. No one ever says it's their fault. So let me be the first. The problems with this hospital are the legislature's fault. This is our hospital, and for too long we have stood by and all we've done is try to pin the tail on somebody else. Well, let me put the tin on this body. We put this money in today. I guarantee we will have the same problems tomorrow. We pass this resolution today. I guarantee we will still have the same problems tomorrow. So what are we doing here? Giving strongly worded encouragement to the governor that the hospital is in problems? I think that's kind of the worst kept secret on Guam. I think we all know the hospital has a problem. And if you didn't know it now and you need this resolution to tell you, welcome to 2023, folks. The Army Corps and GMH's lifespan. The Army Corps of Engineers said 5 years ago that this building had 7 years left of good life. They also said that there was a major fault line at Ipao Point, making it a safety hazard for our island's only public hospital, and building a temporary hospital while they replaced the old GMH is a logistical nightmare. What we are seeing is a very shaky future for our healthcare. The Republican solution is the same thing we've been doing for decades and been failing. We just throw money at it, point the finger without addressing the management, without addressing medical negligence, without addressing the facilities. Nurse Flores said that GMH building will not survive another typhoon. I cannot be the only one who was holding my breath all throughout this last storm, scared that our only public hospital wouldn't make it through the typhoon. We need to think about the future, not just pointing blame with resolutions or throwing money at the problem. We can't just be hoping and praying GMH survives typhoon rains and winds. We need to start looking forward. And while I support getting more funding to GMH. I cannot support that funding unless we have a new location ready to go for a new hospital. Otherwise, we are just continuing the mistakes of the past and doing them again today. We need to stop playing political football and trying to blame this administration or that administration. It's irrelevant whose fault it is. There's a problem today. And I urge my colleagues to think of these funding for GMH and the new hospital not as separate problems, but as one problem, because both need to be done. We need to pay our vendors, make sure that the hospital is functioning for the small amount of useful years it has left. But we must also get a giddy up on that new location. Wherever that location is, the best time to build the hospital was 10 years ago. The next best time is today. Let's fund the hospital and get a new location squared away. Until we do both, I cannot support this resolution, and I cannot support more funding to GMH until we settle on a new location, until we have financial oversight over GMH's finances by, frankly, people who are experts at it. Not until we address medical negligence. The people of Guam need us to get our act together now. For as long as I could remember, 20 plus long years, that hospital has needed upgrades and change. Let us be that change today. With that, I ask my colleagues not to support this resolution until we can have a new location for our hospital secured. And with that, Madam Speaker, I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Senator Parkinson. On the resolution, is there anyone else who'd like to speak on the resolution? One minute recess. We're back from recess. Senator Duenas, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker. I certainly rise in full support of the resolution. You know, Madam Speaker, in dealing with experts in the field of recovery, one of the things that they'll tell you when you're trying to recover is the first step you need to make is to admit you have a problem. That's what this resolution is doing. Yes, as my retiring colleague spoke, it's stating the obvious. But the problem, Madam Speaker, is the obvious has not resulted in any action. And I thank you for agreeing that the conditions exist under which an emergency session is a responsible thing to do. Unfortunately, as my colleague and the author of the resolution stated, we won't get to any solutions today because the funding mechanism for the hospital failed to make it on the agenda. You know, I was a little perplexed at policy by press release coming out of the governor's office, particularly in a lot of the chiding that the resolution does nothing. And then also beyond that was basically to kind of butcher the testimony of some of the individuals that came down to testify before us. Madam Speaker, 95% of the testimony that was brought forward to us by those that are actually giving patient care painted a very grim, unsafe, and very dire situation. While I agree with the presentation and the frustration with the legislature that a couple of individuals expressed, there just seems to be a breakdown in civics here. See, Madam Speaker, as much as I know most of us in this body would love to have the money for pharmaceuticals, as most of us in this body would love to complete every single item over 5 years ago that was recognized by the Army Corps, we would love to do that. But Madam Speaker, that's not our role. But what have we done? Let's go back to our role. Madam Speaker, you yourself, in the 36th Guam legislature, identified $10 million for repairs and to deal with other things because of oversights and hearings with GMH. And what was on, perhaps I believe, the third page of the PowerPoint presentation that management provided to us, one of the squares there boldly stated, the $10 million that this legislature appropriated, no funds received. Madam Speaker, we stumbled upon this $30 million of outstanding to vendors by, in this last fiscal year budget that was passed, we called GMH down here. A month prior to that, Senator Brown, in a hearing, had asked some questions of management. I believe it was their budget hearing just before we went into August, and they said at that time they were $22 million in arrears to vendors. By the time we got into the budget session, Madam Speaker, that was $30 million. Through some changes in the budget process, we were at least able to give them an additional $9 million in this fiscal year's budget. But as you know, Madam Speaker, that is still woefully short from what is needed. Madam Speaker, I believe this body, and definitely the last legislature, has been doing everything that we can to try to help GMH. Now let's address this situation of a new hospital and that being at the core of the problem that exists here. I guess one of the best things with the back and forth and the final call to session was the latest release by the governor stating that she agrees, finally in her words, while I agree that there are major outstanding issues at the hospital. Here we go again with presented legislation that, of course, we didn't take up, so I won't talk about it. You promised a public hearing, and I think it's a very great thing to do. But we're once again having that discussion. Even though time and time again it's been expressed that we have to now immediately go in and make this current hospital sound in order to get us to that eventuality in that day. As a matter of fact, Madam Speaker, another thing that we've done in this legislature is we set out and we laid out a transparent process by passing a bill that this body entirely voted for, in fact, in an override, to set the stage for a proper, well-announced set of meetings with the legislature fully involved to sit down and once and for all come up with an agreement on building a new hospital. That was your legislation, Madam Speaker. In the testimony from the good members that came down that are nurses at the hospital, Eagles Field fell apart. What's your plan? We had nothing to do with Eagles Field falling apart. All we did was ask for transparency. All we did was ask for bring your plan down. We weren't the ones who didn't request another extension to the Navy. We weren't the ones who told the Attorney General, send us a letter over here that he cannot sign off on the contract going forward because of the missing elements. That was not us. We were sitting here waiting. I'm saying this, Madam Speaker, not to play the blame game, but to say we have been waiting. What's your plan? We want to work with the governor to make a plan. But we also want to work with the people of Guam to make that plan. Because you saw what happened the last time that they were excluded from the plan. These halls were full of people who said, no, don't do it that way. So once again, why are we here? Why do we introduce this resolution? We introduced it, yes, to state the obvious, but let's talk once again about a result. The governor has now committed, thank God, to at least $20 million in ARP funding to assist with the perennial problems at GMH. So I guess without us passing an additional funding source, at least there's hope. So, Madam Speaker, the bottom line is this. We can debate that for 2 decades, not enough has been done. We can debate and talk about Republican versus Democrat. We can debate that stuff all day long. But meanwhile, one thing that there's no debate about, there are patients every single day showing up to Guam Memorial Hospital who need life-saving care. And I think after what was presented so eloquently by the individuals who are providing that care, that's not only woefully inadequate at this point, Madam Speaker, but it is downright dangerous and insufficient as far as the reasonable quality of care to be expected. That's what we're here to discuss. You know, Madam Speaker, I also, other than having talked to counselors and as my term at Department of Youth Affairs in terms of treatment and things that we have to do to try to help individuals who have difficulties getting that kind of advice that, you know, admitting a problem is your first entry to recovery. I also like to listen to subject matter experts. And I heard Dr. Wen the other day, Dr. Hoan Wen, the former Physicians Advisory Group chair during the COVID emergency, on a media outlet saying, if you want to see a structure, and if you want to see an inadequate level of care being provided and what constitutes an emergency, he knows of no other on Guam than to go up to GMH to visualize what is truly, truly a state of emergency. I know doctors are very busy people, and they probably don't like having to put themselves in the media to try to point things out. But to go on a media outlet as probably one of the surely highly recognized doctors on Guam, and who has given a lot to Guam as well, to take the time to state that publicly, then I have to say, Madam Speaker, this resolution 21537 on its face has merit. I want to close with this, Madam Speaker. You know, this talk about the fact that this resolution represents an abrogation of responsibility and asking for more federal involvement is kind of a slap in the face to the fact that we receive hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, in fact, billions of dollars in this last COVID emergency, in just regular annual funding. Madam Speaker, it is our job to utilize those resources to their maximum capability and what they were called for. Not a savings account, but a rescue mission. American Rescue Plan has no savings account on it. It doesn't say deposit here and plan for the future. This is not a call for the federal government to give us less self-governance. This is a call to avoid that, Madam Speaker, to do our job so that we are not held accountable to monies that are given to us for a specific purpose. So I call on us to get out of that mentality of saying, let somebody else do it and let's do it ourselves, and prove to the people that we're committed to committed to this process, and committed to do what needs to be done and do it right. I hope the body will vote in favor of this resolution. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the resolution, Senator Brown, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the opportunity to speak in support of Resolution 215. Interesting that a number of our colleagues did not support this particular resolution. And maybe they don't need to, because they can say, oh, that's from the other side of the aisle, so, we're not going to support it. Or we're going to tie this whole issue of the current emergency situation at GMH to the construction of a new building and say that, oh, we're not going to address the critical needs of the hospital until we approve and authorize what the governor wants to build a building. A building that, of course, since time is short, they are in the 5th year of their administration, 3 years remaining, will not be there for the completion or maybe even the start of construction. Because we want to make that the issue. We want to make that what we connect to the emergency, because we're not going to support the emergency if we don't get what we want. Because after all, isn't that what this has all been about? The administration only extends their hand out, which is rare, when they want something. Otherwise, they only talk to their select senators here, and they don't talk to those select senators in the eyes and days of the public. No, they don't do that. They do that behind closed doors. Madam Speaker, you were there. I was there. There were a number of our colleagues, but the majority of our colleagues that are here were not there at the hearing for GMH. Maybe they watched the repeat, maybe they watched it online, maybe they listened to the media reports, but they weren't there. And I have to say that the statements that were made that evening were very concerning, as the statements that have been made by GMH administration as we went through this whole budget process was concerning. Because GMH did not come to us and say, we are in a financial crisis. We have not been paying our vendors. We are $22 million in debt and are still not paying vendors. We are not getting the basic medical supplies that we need to take care of patients at GMH. No, did they voluntarily come and provide that? Absolutely not. We had to ask the questions. Now, during that particular hearing in September, and you know, this nurse, Flores, that, you know, has a pretty connect line, we know who that line is to the administration. We saw the governor's office use her quotes that they thought benefited them. But you know what concerned me was the comments that she actually made with regards to the current situation at the hospital. And I'm going to read it out of the resolution for our people out there that don't happen to have a copy of this resolution. And this was a hearing that occurred on September 28th. And this is what she said. We regularly lack essential materials like linens and pillows, diabetic tube feeding formula, underpads for patients to poo and pee on, inner tracheostomy cannulus, wipes to clean patients, pre-filled epinephrine syringes for medical emergencies, and so many other things to add to this list. The nurse went on to state, we didn't have wipes for months. As an alternative, we were told to use paper towels to clean and bathe our patients. To our embarrassments, patients' families witnessed this and have donated wipes because of the pitiful situation the hospital is in. It is sad and embarrassing, and it is disgraceful that you've allowed this to be the standard of care for our people. I don't know how anyone in a position of leadership here can't hear those comments unless you're going to, you know, counter and say that what this nurse is stating is not truthful. But, you know, for her and others there in the medical community come out that work at GMH and come forth, I'm sure at a certain degree of discomfort because they're not going to be looked upon well. You know, when I asked the question of Lillian Posadas with regards to, during the budget process here, what are they doing if they're not paying their vendors? Because you're right, Senator Chris, we did ask that question during their budget hearing. They didn't volunteer the information, we had to ask. How much in debt are you to your vendors, or what do you owe to your vendors? Oh, we owe $22 million. I know it's the aging. Is it 30, 60, 90 days? Oh, we're beyond that. And then when I asked the question again of Lillian Posadas during the budget here in this very hall, the response is, oh, we work with other vendors. Somehow we're supposed to take that explanation and go, oh, okay, makes sense, right? You're not paying all these other vendors that you have, but you're working with other vendors that I'm sure want to stand in line to not be paid so that they can't get more supplies and more medicines. We talk about the building. Oh, we can't take care of our people without a brand new building. A building, again, as I mentioned at the very beginning, won't be built for years or completed. Maybe the current governor will be invited by a future governor for the ribbon cutting. You know, I don't even know if they extended that courtesy of Governor Calvo when he left office, because these projects that were completed towards the very end of his administration, this current administration is very quick to take credit for, very quick to put their name and say, oh, this is part of our agenda. Well, maybe that future governor will say, oh, this is part of my agenda. You know, you want to play the dirt of politics, there's the dirt of politics. It's so immature, especially when we want to take credit for stuff we didn't even do. This particular case where we're at now is very surprising to me. Surprising to me because this I expected better. Why? Because when the governor ran, she said she was a banker, she was a mother, she was a grandmother, and she reminded us time and time and time again that she was a nurse. Her more than even I know the significance and importance of patient care and having the medicines and the supplies that you need to take care of a patient. And yet, during her administration, 5 years in, this is where we're at. 5 years in, this is where we are at. When this administration ran, one of the main issues they ran on was what? Health care. Health care could only lead us to believe as a people that we're going to get better health care with this administration. Anyone could be governor right now and end up with the situation that we have at GMH. Anyone here could be governor. But in her particular case, even I, who served many terms with her in this body, expected more. Why? Because, oh my goodness, dear colleagues, remember all those times we've been here? Remember all the times the representatives from the administration bragged about the excess revenue in this government? My goodness, it was falling from the sky like the rain last night. And boy, some of us couldn't wait to appropriate, because we love to appropriate and make sure our name is attached to it so we can get credit. But were we taking care of the key issues that we go out every other year and every 4 years and tell our people, we care about you, your health, we care about your education, the education of your children and your grandchildren, and we care about your safety. But when the time comes, is that what we're prioritizing? Because obviously that's not the case now with where the hospital is. The governor could have transferred money with her transfer authority that a number of our colleagues felt she should have in this last budget. We're only in the second week. Remember, colleagues, that 15%? 15% of $1 billion? And yes, Senator Chris brought it up. Senator Chris Duane is here. All that ARP money that she keeps holding on to, that is intended for the very purpose of health care for our people. So when you look at all of that reality, you have to wonder, why are we in this situation that we are in now? And why do healthcare professionals that I'm sure the governor knows and can identify with, commiserate with, why are they coming down here crying out for basic resources to do their job? Why do they even have to? What does that tell us? If we cannot even fund these basic needs at the Guam Memorial Hospital, we can't even get sanitation wipes up there. What was the explanation when I asked that question of the administrator? They clogged the sewer line. Hoffa, what? Did I catch that? That's the reason we don't have these sanitation wipes to clean patients at the hospital? They can use paper towels and toilet paper? Really? I don't know, folks. If you buy that, good luck to you. Good luck to you. We can't even do that today. We don't even need to be here. You're right. One of our previous speakers, I from the mouth of babes. We don't even need to be here today. The governor could have transferred money within the budget appropriation. The governor could use ARP. She always reminds us that's her power. It's her money to decide, not us. We don't get to tell her what to do with ARP money. So, yeah, she could have avoided this. That's what is so puzzling. It's so puzzling. You would think that you want to hit your key marks because that's what you go out and tell the people that you're going to do. Health care. You know, I recall, I wasn't here in that legislature, but I recall Governor Calvo's time towards the end, right? The hearse that was parked in front of the Guam legislature for weeks. The cry for additional support and finances. I mean, at least the governor knew to ask for it. We don't have that now. We have total avoidance. And the only thing we can get are our staff to write press releases about how we need a new hospital, and that's going to be the solution for our people. Is that going to take care of the needs up there now? The repairs that, yes, yeah, I'd love to build a new building tomorrow, but we have to work with what we have right now. We have to take care of the patients that are there now that need the care. There's no reason they can't expedite repairs where they need them. Because don't we have the money? Before we didn't have the money. Now we got a lot of money. There's no reason we can't do it in phases. There's no reason we can't look at Oka Point again. I mean, when Oka Point was abandoned, my goodness, that hospital was built in the 50s. Just around the time Naval Hospital was built. Naval Hospital was only torn down a few years ago. GMH was abandoned, the original GMH was abandoned in the early 90s. That building wasn't even that old, and it was abandoned, literally abandoned. Why aren't we looking at it in phases in terms of what we can afford? But no, the governor wants the hospital complex. We can't even get basic supplies paid for at GMH now, during her administration, at a time when we brag that we got all the money. Money, 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 money. Where were we last year here when we talked about pay raises? Do we have, oh yes, we have the money. We can pay for it. Right before the election, we can pay for everything. And a number of our colleagues here said, oh yeah, let's do that. Let's increase the cost of government by another $70, $80 million a year forever. Because we got the money. And colleagues, you just fell for it right, man, you just delivered it. But where are we today for critical needs for people that need it? Maybe it's you, maybe it's your immediate family, maybe it's your loved one that's up there that needs care. And here we are trying to attract more healthcare professionals. How are we going to do that when they have such dire circumstances to have to work under to try to save people, to heal people? If this is the best we have to offer as leaders in this community at a time when we're supposedly overrun with money, what does that say about us? Of course, you're always going to have additional costs at GMH as long as we mandate that GMH has to serve everybody that comes through the door, whether they can pay or not. There's no big, revelation with that. That we've known that for years. But this, I have to tell you, at this juncture for me, as I mentioned earlier, was a big surprise. Because I at least expected that to be, it's got to be more than running for office to make sure we take care of our high-paid, make sure our consultants get, make sure our consultants get paid, make sure our major donors get paid, make sure that we're able to hire people. That they do very well. Good Lord, lightning speed. But the stuff that actually matters to our people, for colleagues, for you that didn't want to vote to even entertain this resolution, good luck to you, your priorities, good luck to you. If anything, we should all be enraged about what has happened up there, what is going on up there now, and demand accountability of the leadership. Because it's a reflection of this administration. They're in office, this is their moment to shine. And I had hoped that they would shine, especially in this area. This area I thought was a given. And here we are today, having to fight to ensure that the administration address these issues, having to hold this up publicly to make sure that they're accountable to ensure that the hospital has the basic resources and supplies they need. I can't even begin to think what more to say, Madam Speaker, but I definitely rise in support of this resolution, and I hope that we address the immediate needs of the hospital. Thank you.
Thank you. On resolution number 215-37, Senator Lujan, followed by Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is masih ni rekenisa perequentus paguna puengi. Betutun bialuk leche. The reason why I'm saying that is because I got to excuse my colleagues for not supporting this resolution, and Bill 165 LS. They probably didn't read the title. Resolution 215-37 COR reads, relative to urgently and steadfastly requesting the governor of Guam to acknowledge the dire and decrepit conditions that exist at the Guam Memorial Hospital and to declare a state of extreme emergency to address the unsafe, unhealthy, unsanitary, and financially challenging conditions that exist. Its sister bill, 164-37 LS, an act to provide emergency funding to the Guam Memorial Hospital. Emergency funding for an extreme emergency situation that the Guam Memorial Hospital is facing. To say that to fund the hospital, to throw money into the hospital without identifying a new hospital is how this world, we know that we need a new hospital. I have proposed the fastest way to get a new hospital at this point, and I tell you, and I'll propose it again, the fastest way to get a new hospital is work a public-private partnership with GRMC. Just this past week, we read about a medical facility that was built to augment the needs of GRMC. And the two parties, the builder and the hospital, are in lawsuit because of non-use or construction that wasn't completed. And I'm saying, down the line, probably, because this hospital that we have now was owned by the Archdiocese, MCM. And Guam Memorial Hospital took it over. I think down the line, the government of Guam might be looking at that hospital as well. I've always said that the infrastructure is already there. You can move in, do a public-private partnership. A new wing needs to be built. Let's build it. There's a medical facility building next door. It can be utilized as well. You can use it now. It can be used now. Work something out. Again, these two parties are in litigation at this point. That'll be the fastest way. Likewise, we have property up there in Ipa Point. To say it's in a, of course, earthquake fault. I guess all the hotels are as well. They're still building. There's another one that's going to be going up. The hospital is in dire need. And to say, again, that we cannot do emergency funding for the hospital at this point, and we're not going to do so until another hospital is built or identify another place for a hospital to be built, that's going to be done. It'll be done soon, I'm sure. But in the meantime, our urgent need for a hospital to be fixed is urgent. And to say you're not going to want to put money in there is to say you don't want to pay the vendors. My communication with the governor, she acknowledges the fact that she wants to pay the vendors to the tune of $30 million. She also acknowledges the fact that she was going to use ARP funds to the tune of $20 billion to fix the hospital. And that acknowledgement was made by the administration. So to say you're going to have identify and you place at this point in order to be able to pay the vendors? And because you're not paying the current vendors, you're looking for other vendors to provide almost the same things to get yourself in debt? Let me say this, that regardless of a new facility being built, and it will be, the government of Guam is going to run into the same situation as well because of statute. And the statute basically is that regardless of the patient's ability to pay, that they have to be seen at Guam Memorial Hospital. Now, all hospitals have that for emergency care. The problem with GMH at this point is not just emergency care, but a lot of people use it for their primary care as their medical clinic. Until we find a solution for that, to solve that, and we do have that with public health, we're going to run into the same problem. We had that at old GMH when we moved in and took over MCM. That problem came with the move. So if we don't change, if we don't find a solution for that, for folks using emergency room as their primary care source for medical care, that problem will follow as well, wherever you go. And so to say again that a Republican solution is through, again, resolutions, no. It's identifying the problem we have. And of course, the resolution without the funding source, that Sister Bill 164-37 LS, is the funding source. So, of course, what we're taking up right now is we're identifying the problem, that we're in extreme emergency, and we want the declaration of such. But yeah, you're right. What is the funding source? Well, this body voted down the funding source. We only had 7 votes. We need 8 to get it on. So yeah, that's what happened. So to say it's empty because we're only identifying the problem, yeah, we have to place both. Identification and calling for the declaration of such, of emergency, and the funding source. La leche. You just want us to identify, and then what? Got a text, afa bilan mi bizu? Afa boy bilan mi bizu? In the perfect session, pes gana man halu man zo estaban van makado zo. So, you're right. This resolution will probably pass, and I hope it does, and I encourage my colleagues, both Democrat and Republican, because one of the things I know they don't ask you when you go to GMH is whether or not you're a Democrat or Republican. That's our only civilian hospital, public hospital. And again, providing the emergency funding for Guam Memorial Hospital is urgent, critical. And that is not something that this legislature can ignore. This is not a game, Madam Speaker, of let's kick the can down the road. GMH definitely needs life-saving medication. This is about keeping critical community resources functioning to be able to save lives. The fact that we are at this point is sad enough. This is another chapter in a financial soap opera that should not be airing its reruns. GMH needs funding, and we are obligated to find the funding and to provide it, Madam Speaker. We must do all that we can, that, of course, to keep our only private or public hospital, functioning and working to save lives. This is not Republican or Democrat. This is not about political backbiting and trying to score political points. Enough gamemanship already. GMH needs us to find common ground and to get the funding that it needs. Of course, I asked my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to put this partisan differences aside, with politics aside, and work in unity on behalf of the people of Guam. Let us fund the critical needs, of course, of our only public hospital. And yes, we do need a new hospital. But I tell you, alongside that new hospital, let me just say that when it's built, we're going to have the same problems if we don't solve the situation that people use the emergency room as its primary source, primary care facility. Well, again, for the third time, moving from the old hospital to what we have now to the new hospital, that problem will continue to exist. So, holistically speaking, and to look at this holistically, yes, we need to fund it now because it's in critical need. We need to pay the vendors. We need to buy the urgent materials, medicines, and medical supplies that are needed. And likewise, the infrastructure, the HVAC system. The decrepit situation that not only patients, but hospital workers, nurses, doctors, technicians, and everybody else that works there, the conditions that they have to work in under. That needs to be funded. That needs to be taken care of. And likewise, like I said, a new hospital is needed, but we need to also solve the problem that we're seeing that's causing a 30 million plus almost annually situation. We need to plug up that hole. But to say we can't fund it, we shouldn't fund it, don't say you don't want to pay the vendors that provided the services, that provided the equipment, that provided the medical supplies already, that it helped save lives already. To say that is a disgrace. With that, I urge my colleagues again to vote in favor of Resolution 215-37 COR. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Lujan. On the resolution, Speaker Terlahi.
Si Zeus Masi. This resolution that we're discussing right now says again that there are unsafe, unhealthy, unsanitary, and financially challenging conditions that exist at the hospital. I absolutely stand in support of that. It also asks that we declare, that the governor declare a state of emergency at the hospital. I will support that. However, I just find it almost ludicrous that we have to ask the governor to declare a state of emergency when we have been at the hospital in a state of emergency since COVID. We had the COVID emergency, and then we went into the Typhoon Mawar emergency, and we are now in a state of emergency from the last storm that passed through. And so there's, excuse me? So there's nothing to...
Colleagues, can we please have some order?
So while we are finding it urgent, the problem is, how do we get the governor to find it urgent? How do we get the entire executive branch to find the hospital to be urgent? The hospital, for years, hasn't been in need of capital improvement projects, and when the Army Corps came in, they made it crystal clear. You want to build a new hospital? We recommend building a new hospital, and nobody said, let's not build a new hospital. Everybody said, okay, how do we do that? And they said, you've got to fix your current hospital and make it up to par to last for a minimum of 5 years. So there's no like, what happened here? If anybody was listening, and I was in those meetings when Army Corps was exiting Guam, and the governor was in the meetings, and the lieutenant governor was in the meetings, and every single person that has come down for these GMH oversights, except for the lawyers, were in the meetings, because the lawyers are new. They've got 2 new lawyers. Whereas when they were under the AG, their collections were not an issue. And if you read the last audit by the OPA, collections were not the issue back then. But now the issues they've grown from just capital improvement, fix the falling roof, fix the elevator, fix the EHR system, get a new one. Those were the critical, fix the HVAC. But now, it's like deja vu over and over, and we hear over and over like, oh, we're now fixing the HVAC. Oh, we're now fixing, we're going to get a new EHR system again. It's very hard for the public to follow. It's hard for me to follow. And I've got every single detail that I could ever want in front of my face because I've asked for it over and over again, and I'm telling you, the story changes. When we tried to give them $10 million years ago, they said, we don't need it. They refused to ask for any capital improvement money in their budgets since I've been a senator. They've refused. They come in and they said, no, we don't need it. The governor's going to take care of us, or we're going to take care of ourselves with our revenue. And I want to give them some credit because they've actually done a lot of it that way. And then they got a boost through the COVID money, and then it's like some bomb went off because everything has gone haywire. But we're here for solutions. So if passing a resolution urging the governor to recognize an emergency at GMH is going to get the governor to recognize an emergency at GMH and do what? Use her emergency powers? She has those. She has exclusive Organic Act of Guam powers over the hospital. It's been proven in court cases. It's exclusive. But yet, the legislature has consistently tried, yes, send money there because that is our job. And that is exactly what the management has been telling the nurses. As we heard in their testimony, the nurses are being told we cannot get the supplies. This is actually a standard of care. It's gone way beyond fiscal management or, capital improvement. It's now standard of care, critical crisis. Because if you can't get the right supplies, you're bringing down the standard of care that even the GMH has been operating under in previous years. And they admitted that to us in our budget hearings. So what we want to do today for a solution is we want them to pay off their vendors. And we asked them during the budget hearings, do you have a plan to pay off these vendors? And at first they did. They said, we are going to bill the $100 million worth of bills that we were not able to bill. They were behind compared to the past 5 previous fiscal years by $100 million in billing because of the switch over to the new EHR system, because of that decision that somebody made up there to shut down the entire system and everything went haywire. All of those things combined, they have not been able to catch up on the billing. They testified recently that they're doing a very good job trying to catch up, but they're still far behind, and thus the $30 million, the $100 million in unbilled, the $30 million in unpaid vendors, and of course $62 million in receivables that they need to collect from insurance companies and others. So we want to give them a solution. I actually read the governor's letter to us trying to divert this from there's a fiscal and standard of care crisis at the hospital to we need to find a site for the new hospital. She told me personally that new hospital is not going to be built while she's governor. We're going to prepare for it. We're going to plan for it. We're going to get it in gear, but it cannot be built in 2 years. So I don't like that we are going to try to distract everybody by, they put on their Facebook page again, Speaker Therese wants to look for other places for the hospital. No, I don't. That's not my job. But if you're going to pick a site, I absolutely want to see how you pick that site, because every other study that has ever come out about where to build a hospital in Guam pointed to Ipao Point, except for the study that the governor came out with Matrix, and we paid them millions of dollars to put it there without any details as to why. And now, again, we're going to have a public hearing on that, and we'll flesh it out, which I think is our job too. We're going to flesh out where the new hospital is going to be. We're not going to delay it, but we're investing hundreds of millions of dollars, and I think the people have absolute right to know why this site is better than Ipao Point and why they won't clean up Ipao Point. So I'm also having an oversight hearing on that. But in the governor's letter, she pledges $20 million in ARP funding to address GMH's structural concerns. She's willing to put that in right away. So I say, well, where is that? Because right away should have happened at the last oversight hearing when we had the CEO willing to quit. Everyone was frustrated. The nurses were in here testifying about the conditions. Why didn't she put the $20 million in right then and there, that day? Give them some support. That's the thing. She makes it sound like it's a condition. I'll only put the $20 million in if Senator Jesse Lihan has agreed to put in $30 million from appropriations for the vendor invoices. What? I don't understand that at all. So it's either we agree there's a crisis up there, and she says, yes, I join the legislature's concern over the deteriorating state of our only public hospital. And I'm committed. Not, I have put it in, it's on its way, it went there last week. No, I'm committing, and then talks about the whole Jesse Lujan thing. I don't know. We just passed the budget with maybe a month ago. And they were in here and we said, we're giving you more than the governor asked for you, GMH, for fiscal year 24. We're giving you more. And they said, thank you. We'll take it. But it's only in our last oversight hearing when it actually wasn't the administrator, it was the financial officer who said, we need it. Despite our billing, we're catching up in billings, and we're doing all these things, and our plan was we were gonna get $2 million from the governor for DOC, we got it. We were gonna get $6 million transferred from the governor, we got that, but we spent all of it, and we are going to raise $15 million from raising the rates. But that is not going to happen immediately. That takes like a year, if not longer, to do that. And then, of course, they want to rebase the Medicare rates, and that takes years, as we saw. So they finally admitting that they cannot catch up to the vendor payables without some help. So I pointed out in my response to the governor, GMH requires her full attention, or the lieutenant governor's full attention, if the governor's off island, the full attention, meaning management attention. It requires them to use their Organic Act powers, to use their emergency powers that exist. Emergency procurement exists. But we need best management practices. We must deliver the money to the hospital that we have already appropriated to the hospital. $10 million for capital improvements, $15 million for labor and delivery, $5 million for specialists. There's more, because as one of my colleagues said, even Dennis Rodriguez was putting money over there, and I don't think it got there. That is an executive branch function, to put the money where the law says it should go. And that is a shame if that is what caused our crisis. But there are many things compounding. But there's just no excuse anymore that we now know, and we have to admit that we're in a crisis. If they gave the $20 million today, that would be 70% of the vendor payables. GMH could get their supplies, and they could get the quality supplies that they need. It shouldn't be conditional. Nobody should have to beg anymore. There shouldn't be any deals made as to whether we agree to put the new hospital in one place or another. That's a separate question which must be addressed. And I, like some of my colleagues, I did hear promises of private management of the hospital. In the last election, 2 election cycles ago, but I also heard it from this governor. But all of it. Today, we have a solution. Bail them out or not bail them out on the vendor payables. Bail them out with ARP money or that's sitting in a bank immediately today, or bring them all in and let's discuss whether we really need to use FY22 audited excess funds, which this administration can't even get the audit done. So according to the public auditor, he's waiting for this administration to finish an FY22 audit as we are going beyond FY23 into FY24. So talk about compounding problems. You know, I keep wanting to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, but it's like, are they hiding something? And when we asked them, where did all the excess money go that you bragged about from the previous years, which the legislature created? We created the budgets, and we did not spend the excess. And we asked them, where is the excess? We got no straight answers from the fiscal team. So if it's sitting in a bank and the governor's telling Senator Lujan to get the 30 million that's sitting in the bank somewhere, yes, I'd like to know too where that is. And when we had them all down here in good faith during our budget and they refused to disclose that information while the GMH is struggling, how many times do we have to say the word unconscionable? I see my time is expired, but I want to thank those who spoke before me. They were very eloquent, and I think outlined all the reasons why we should support this resolution. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Sorry, I passed out amendment to amend the resolution, page 4, lines 5 through 11. This is to remove the line in this resolution that refers to a federal receivership. It's, I would propose this to the body that we delete that.
Senator Barnett.
Ma'am, I'd like to yield my time to Speaker Terlahi.
Thank you, Senator. It would be to change the resolution that currently says it will necessitate the call for a federal receivership to ensure that proper management guidance and support for GMH begin the process needed to restore the hospital's ability to provide a deserving and acceptable level of health care for the people of Guam. And strike that language so that it now reads, a legislature finds that without that an immediate declaration of a state of emergency is necessary with immediate action and diligence from GMH leadership and the governor of Guam to correct the dysfunctional state of the Guam Memorial Hospital, and proper management guidance and support for GMH to begin the process needed to restore the hospital's ability to provide a deserving and acceptable level of health care for the people of Guam. Just to remove the line that calls for a federal receivership. Now, I don't agree with somebody that says this sends us down decolonization road. What do you think it means when we cannot run a hospital? Receivership or not, if we can't run a hospital, our political status will be dead in the water. And that's why I say let's all step up. Get over whatever it is that you have to put my name on Facebook every single day as the blame for this hospital. And let's build a new hospital, but right now, immediately, today, let's give them the money to pay their vendors. Let's get those vendors. Let's get some experts in there so that they don't have to restart this EHR system process, RFP, all over again after we just spent millions on it. And we're not going to start off a new collection system after the AG was doing a successful job of collections. We got in a new contract, they got into lawyers, and it's going downhill. And we get them the help that they really need, and we get them the experts that they need, and we put all our resources into it like we begged them to do for DOE. I still believe that the people of Guam are capable of running a hospital, are capable of doing this, are capable of having a legislature that moves the money when it needs to, and a governor that moves the money when it is available to her and under her control. And I just don't like trying to trick the people that that's not really the issue. The issue is we needed a new hospital. What? Why are they so defensive about needing a new hospital when I haven't heard a single person in here say that we don't need a new hospital and we don't need it urgently? And I think it's a distraction at this point while we're facing an emergency that has become a crisis that is affecting patients. It's not just affecting how the hospital looks. It affects patients. So I ask for the support of this amendment. I think it would make the resolution better. I still think we need a solution if this, and hoping this resolution is going to get us to that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
On the Terlahi resolution, I saw Senator Joe and Senator San Augustine and Senator Tydegui. On the amendment, Senator Tydegui.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, I believe everything that the speaker has mentioned, everything she said made sense. There was everything that backed it up, you know, that our hospital is in dire need, more than dire need. It's ready to go to rumble. It's gonna fall. I mean, we have nurses who put their jobs on the line to come into this body in front of the administration to tell us how bad it is. This resolution, I stand in full support, but mostly I stand in full support because of the receivership. That's the teeth. That's the teeth this resolution has. You're taking it away, then it becomes just political mumble jumble. Madam Speaker, you know, the Joint Commission that comes to accredit the hospital, they have a job when they come to look at our hospital, our current hospital, and without that accreditation, we're gonna lose a whole lot more than we are, even if this resolution passes without the federal receivership. Even if Bill 164 passes, we will lose a whole lot more. DOC, Department of Education on federal funds, Guam Behavioral Wellness, our dump, our ORDOT dump. Because this government could not get their act together because there are people who want to play politics and not do what's right for the people of Guam. You know, there is one thing that my colleague Senator Parkinson said that I agree, only that one part though, where he says that we need a new management. We do. We do, but how many times have we put management in place and it has failed us? Time and time again, nothing has worked. And our people deserve more. How many more people are we gonna lose? Our people from Guam leave because they can't get medical help. They're too afraid to walk into GMH. And now we're finding out our other hospital, the private hospital, is in trouble too. This is the teeth of this resolution. Governor, if you can't find a decent management company that comes in, then let the federal government take over. You know, Madam Speaker, when we had that public hearing last week, when management, with no respect to this body, got up and walked away, when it got hot, nope, she got out. That's the kind of management we have today? It's time, people. I don't know how many times I've been stopped when I go to Costulus or Home Depot, my favorite place to go to, Home Depot, or even people calling me up I don't even know, I've never met before, stopping me saying, thank you. Thank you for finally calling out the administration. Let's change this. We're losing too many of our people to leave off island because they don't have the health care they needed. How many statistics are there on this island for people with cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure? In fact, I think you need to calm down because, God forbid, I need to go to Guam Memorial right now because my blood pressure is going up. We can't change this federal receivership. This resolution tells the governor, does more than tells the governor, it puts the fire to her feet. If it passes this body has spoken. You need to get your act together, or we go into receivership, because where's our ORDAT dump now? It's being taken care of. DOC, though it needs a new building too as well, needs funding for that, taken care of. DOE, on funding. Federal money coming into DOE has to go through a third-party receiver because DOE messed up. And it's been there for 10 years. Guam Behavioral Wellness, we just got it back. But it's shaped up. There is nothing to be ashamed about to ask for help, people. There is nothing to be ashamed about, especially if we're having people too afraid to go to the hospital and they are so sick. They'd rather die at home than go into Guam Memorial Hospital. Let alone the staff that works there, the doctors that work. You know how many calls I received from doctors thanking us for finally calling out this administration? I received at least 4 calls from individuals who I thought never liked me because I was for the medical malpractice arbitration to repeal that, but no, they called to say thank you. I agreed with everything our speaker said with regards to the resolution, but this I can't agree on. We can't take the teeth out of this resolution. If we don't do something now, the creditors will, the Joint Commission will. Well, what the heck, the federal government might come in here and say, you know what? Our people use this hospital too sometimes. We've got military buildup people coming, the workers that are coming to build the military buildup buildings and things, workers coming here that may use the hospital. And if this hospital is not up to par or even close to up to par, then we need to make a change. I think everybody on this island is waiting for this hospital to go into receivership. So I ask my colleagues, please don't support this amendment. With all due respect to the Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Chidegui. On the amendment, Senator Perez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. When I saw this, I welcomed the change, the amendment, because, we've all seen what federal receivership looks like. I know, it has come in times when agencies were in need of overhaul. But just to point out the fact that, there are opportunities, there are examples where an agency has overhauled without going to receivership. And so, case in point is GWA. They were under a consent decree in the early 2000s. They were able to make the changes that were necessary to upgrade the system. And my concern with the federal receivership also, in hearing, Guam Solid Waste as well. The federal receivership really had free reign of the expenditures. And so now, as Guam Solid Waste Authority is trying to get back on its feet, or in the process of getting back on its feet, they have to contend with these premium contracts that they feel are unnecessary, and they could do it much more effectively and more cost efficiently. And so before we even go to federal receivership, I understand the plight of Guam Memorial Hospital. It is in dire need, and we really need to ensure that it's properly addressed. because we know it's going to take time for us to rebuild a hospital, but we need to take care of the problems now. But federal receivership may not. I believe there are some issues that come with it, and once you get tied down to federal receivership, it's very hard to have some sort of autonomy in ensuring that the changes and reforms that are made, are going to correct the problem. I think that there are other options besides federal receivership that we can look to make sure that Guam Memorial Hospital is on the right track, because we know that money doesn't solve everything, right? We can't just throw money at a problem and expect it to be fixed. And in this case, we know the problems at GMH really has to do with the billing. It's the system, the IT system is really problematic. And if we work to solve that problem, that can help. Just that one problem alone can help turn the tide of the state that it's in, because right now it's in financial crisis. They can't, $100 million, retiring speaker said $100 million, they're behind in collecting that. And so that has cascading effects on, how they can procure the necessary equipment and keep this hospital afloat, because we really need to keep this hospital afloat now and not wait till a new hospital is built. Because we know what happens. We could see the writing on the wall if we do not contend with this issue now. I mean, I hate to bring it up, but Simon Sanchez is an example. We waited, we didn't have the resources. The resources weren't utilized to ensure that that structure was up to par. And so now it's no longer functional. And this is the path that Guam Memorial Hospital is at. Unless we do something now, today, to help the crisis that exists currently. So I do welcome this amendment, because I think there are other ways, and not this extreme measure, although it seems like, I haven't given up. I haven't gotten to that point where I think it's, we need to go for the hardest solution, but I think there are tough solutions to ensure that the management, and I think part of the issue obviously is, political will to make these decisions, and I think that's one of the issues too. But there are options for that without having to go with full-on receivership. We've seen the federal government, if I could just digress to the federal government, how there was a potential shutdown of the government without, the agreement on the budget. And I think we have to put ourselves into that situation where we really need to sit down and get to a solution collectively. I think the reason for this emergency session is we really need to call attention, but not just call attention, but have a solution in place. And again, I think the solution is there. There are solutions. We just need to have the political will to implement them. So, thank you.
On the amendment, Senator Blas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, when the amendment was first introduced, I looked at it and I said, all right, let me think about this. But then, good senator from Tamuning, when she spoke, she talked about also, good speaker from Georgia, about the concern of, this is just a resolution. How do we put teeth in it? How do we make it so that this is something that would seriously be considered? And that's it. First off, just a little education on as far as the receivership or where it's at. It's in a whereas clause. Okay? It's not in the resolved. It's in whereas. And it basically provides that if things aren't fixed, if the hospital doesn't get the care and the attention that it needs, that it will necessitate the call for a federal receivership. So the onus is on the administration. I think everybody recognizes, and I understand, and I know the concern of that federal receivership. That's the nuclear option. So if you want to be concerned about not wanting to put teeth or not wanting to ensure that something gets done, put everything out as far as what could happen. I don't think that the health of our people, we talked about the receiverships that exist in other places of our government. Education, corrections, solid waste. We're talking about lives here. We're not talking about not the inability not to be able to pick up the trash on Tuesday and pick it up on Friday or until next week Tuesday. We're talking about a life that needs to be saved now. We're talking about the attention that's necessary to save that life. And mind you, it doesn't necessarily take us to be able to call for this. I'm just wondering how come the vendors haven't called for this yet. Because the vendors have every right and they're able to bring this to the attention. And they themselves can call for a receivership. Then what? This doesn't provide a timeline here. Although we want this we want the attention to this matter to be done now, to give it some sense of urgency. There's going to be a discussion on that. It doesn't say here, if you don't do this in 3 weeks or in 3 months, then we're going to move to the next step, that step. Doesn't say that. It says that if it does not get the proper and immediate attention, I don't have a problem with the first few amendments to the language to that paragraph. In fact, yeah, I see where it makes it stronger, and I appreciate that. It's the issue with regard to that language that mentions federal receivership. We scared? We should be. Does it need to get there? It doesn't have to. But what needs to get done right now is immediate. So, in the interest of saving the language like this, I'd like to be able to propose that we bifurcate this amendment. And we bifurcate it basically by dealing with the first 2 lines and then by voting the first 2 lines, then voting for the next 3 lines, or the 2 other lines.
So there is a proposal to amend the amendment.
Bifurcate it, not amend it. Bifurcate it.
Please state where you would like to split the amendments.
I'd like to split the amendment to, first off, we deal with the legislature further finds that an immediate declaration of emergency is necessary. That will be the first portion of the amendment. The second portion will be the second portion would be to strike out the words, it will necessitate the call for federal receivership to ensure that and. So the first one is just to deal with the inclusion, the exclusion of without, and then inclusion of an immediate and is necessary.
On the request to take this amendment in two parts, are there any objections? There's been an objection. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Fails.
Okay, well, you know, it's the beauty of this process. But you know, Madam Speaker, and that be the case, then I stand in objection to this amendment. For the mere reason that we are wondering as to how this is going to be, what teeth we're going to have in this resolution. Well, there it is. We take that out, we don't have any teeth. Thank you very much.
Thank you. On the amendment, Terlahi amendment. On the Terlahi amendment, Senator Barnett, you are recognized.
Thank you. I rise in support of the amendment. It makes this part of this resolution make a lot more sense. Because the federal receivership, it comes with a cost. And I'm not even sure in reading this resolution what this section even means. It will necessitate the call for federal receivership to ensure that and proper management guidance and support for GMH to begin the process needed to restore the hospital's ability to provide a deserving and acceptable level of health care for the people of Guam. Previous speaker said that this amendment, or this section of the resolution was the teeth, but I don't even know if the authors of this resolution could explain the mechanics of how a call for federal receivership is necessitated, and who necessitates it, or even if it's even necessary in this case. I was talking to one of my uncles last night, and we were talking about this emergency session coming up, and he asked me, he said, "Boy, what are you guys gonna do? What are you gonna do?" Because I had to pinch myself, felt like I was dreaming earlier. Adelup and the Republicans actually agree that this resolution does nothing. What it does do is it gives us all an opportunity to get up and talk, and talk some more. We'll talk about all the problems we already know exist at the Guam Memorial Hospital. So I don't think this resolution is the solution, but also I think trying to force through a pie-in-the-sky pet project that our people can't afford is the answer either. This resolution and the new hospital do absolutely nothing about the life-threatening conditions we face today and every single day at our island's only public hospital. This administration seems hell-bent on letting the Guam Memorial Hospital crumble to the ground, all because we're going to build a new hospital. Well, what are our people supposed to do in the meantime? Go to the Surahana? What, our people are just supposed to put aloe vera? I agree that us throwing money at the Guam Memorial Hospital, I don't think it's going to help. Let the governor and the lieutenant governor throw money at the Guam Memorial Hospital because they are sitting on a whole bunch of money. The problem at the Guam Memorial Hospital, to me, is not necessarily money, it's mismanagement. And while the people of Guam are waiting for the solutions, I welcome this chance to to air out all of our dirty laundry about the Guam Memorial Hospital, because that seems to be the only thing that pushes this governor and this lieutenant governor to act. Politics has paralyzed the Guam Memorial Hospital. Politics has poisoned our people's hospital, and our people are the ones paying the price. We all agree, we all acknowledge that the Guam Memorial Hospital needs urgent help now, but acknowledgement isn't action. And we need action on GMH now. Adelup needs to act now. The governor and lieutenant governor have all the authority and ability to address the critical issues at the Guam Memorial Hospital immediately. I echo the comments of the speaker. The governor in a release said she's committed $20 million to immediately address facility issues, structural issues at the Guam Memorial Hospital. And I pray this isn't going to end up like the $20 million we tried to give over to the Guam Department of Education. I pray that these pronouncements of help based on the condition that we empty all the couch cushions of the general fund to find $30 million. I hope these aren't the same pronouncements of help that we got in February from Adelup about helping the schools. The time for talk is over. It's going to take all of us working together, all 15 of us, Republicans, Democrats, the governor, the lieutenant governor, truly working together, genuinely working together. And to blame the legislature for the sad state of the Guam Memorial Hospital as it sits today, nothing could be further from the truth. And some of my colleagues remarked that former Senator Dennis Rodriguez has done the most for healthcare that they can remember. Well, if you think that, I would say you campaigned for the wrong gubernatorial team. Because from the looks of it, it kind of seems like we're supporting former Senator Rodriguez's nonprofit a lot more than we're supporting the Guam Memorial Hospital. Talk about dirty laundry. So I beg the governor, lieutenant governor, to address the problems at GMH immediately, not with $20 million. Busta, take the 20 from the ARP, put another 30 from the ARP on top of it. And then let's genuinely sit at the table and work together to reach a realistic solution to our island's future health care needs. Because, Laned, if my kids cannot even take care of a Guam bomb, I'm not going to go buy them a Tesla. And if we can't even take care of the Guam Memorial Hospital, I don't even want to think about how we can maintain $1 billion medical complex. Complex is too complicated. Let's keep it simple and work together to address not just the critical, what is it this resolution calls it again? This resolution asks the governor of Guam to declare a state of extreme emergency. That doesn't even exist in Guam law. But I agree, it's very extreme. But I don't think they need to declare an emergency to address the issues at the Guam Memorial Hospital. The governor can go down there with their Louis Vuitton purse, open it up, and just throw those ARP funds right at all the problems. And then come on down here to the people's house. We already invited them one time this term. I say we do it again. And instead of chasing after this pie of the sky, put $1 billion medical complex off in the middle of nowhere, let's get realistic about our people's healthcare needs and make sure that we can afford them. Sidus Masi.
Thank you, Senator Barnett. On the amendment, Senator Dueñas.
Sidus Masi, Madam Chair. It's a great discussion. You know, I know many of my colleagues can back me up on this because we heard it. There are actual people there at the hospital under these conditions who are begging for federal receivership. But the retiring speaker's right, but only half are right. What we said was the resolution does nothing if you don't. The resolution doesn't do anything if you don't give money to the hospital. I mean, do we sit here and think that the CFO, the individual responsible for the money, is lying to us? I mean, do you think that you could just came down here and told us that to say, man, I hope we get 30 million because I told them? But I once again, Hoffa, agree with the retiring speaker. We would not have even had a declaration from the governor on the 20 million if we didn't introduce this resolution. Because time and time and time again, we were told, that's not your money. I decide what happens to that money. And the mover of this amendment is right. We've been bargaining down here every time, because that's the only way we can get things done. You put 15 million to help the businesses, I'll put 5. You do this, I'll do that. I giveth, I take it away. 20 million, yes. Oh, now that you gave me emergency fund, no more 20 million. So it's true. But what I do agree is this is not calling out, as I mentioned in my speech on the original motion. It's not calling out for the receivership. It's saying that if you don't do this, you are asking and you are begging for it, and it will necessitate that. I'm sure there's no government that ever went to the federal government and said, hey, can you please put us under receivership? But it is your actions that speak and not your words of commitment. Senator Lujan came out and said, I wasn't sitting at the bargaining table. I didn't say, okay, I'll see you 1 and I'll see your 20 and I'll raise you 10 and give you 30 for this fiscal year. Senator Lujan and the rest of us, what we were doing was we were keeping to our commitment that during the budget session, we kept saying the priority is the hospital. Yes, I want to fund charter schools. Yes, I want to fund X, Y, Z, and beyond the alphabet. But the reality is we could not pry the money from those hands out of ARP. So we have to put the general fund on the hook first. Because that's the only authority this body has. And so once again, when we're asked, what is this going to do? I agree with the question. But at least it's going to answer a question that we keep getting by these individuals that are in the front line taking care of patients, are being fed propaganda that says, look at those guys, they're doing nothing. They didn't give me Eagles Field. They didn't do what they needed to. They're doing nothing. So once again, back to civics, we're only doing what we can do. We speak 2 ways. Through substantive resolutions and through bills. That's the only way this body talks. Other than that, everything else is meaningless. If you don't put it on paper, it's meaningless. So once again, yes, I don't think there's going to be those of us that are going to be jumping on a plane and going to Washington and say, hey, Department of Health, can you do us a favor? Put us under receivership. But we're putting in a resolution what states the obvious to tell the story. But I agree, in closing, give the whole 50 magay. That's what we've been saying from the beginning. Preserve the general fund. That's the whole debate we had during the discussion on Department of Education as well. And through all the chastisement and through everything that came down, we even now have to learn that unless the Department of Education gets federal requests, they're $36 million short. So it's true. Use the darn money. Lo, the only way we talk is through resolutions and bills, so that we can go back to those that come to us and shake us up and say, what are you doing? What have you done? Here it is. I agree with my good minority leader who wanted to bifurcate it, because the beginning of the resolution language that was amended does make it stronger. But the statement underneath does what everything else that this resolution does, states the obvious. But if we vote no, then I guess we're in denial. That's why I want to leave the language, although I would have preferred to leave the top language, but we'll see how the body deliberates it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Duenas. On the amendment to the resolution 215, Terlahi amendment. Speaker, you may close.
Thank you. Again, I just want to remove this receivership language because if they want to make a call for a receivership later, they will always be welcome to do that. What I believe right now, though, is what we need is really to join together and to show everybody that we're willing to do whatever it takes. We're going to work together. We're going to give them the support. We're going to not waste any money paying a receiver to do what we can do. And I don't want to debate whether we can or we cannot. It just seems, honestly, that's a waste of time. The governor is the governor of Guam. She brought us through COVID, and she has some great accomplishments. I know that she can manage this hospital if they want to. But what was made clear during the hearing is that from the hospital staff is that there were so many things they didn't do because the governor's vision was to build a new one and not to repair this one. And now they're scrambling to repair it because maybe they were gambling that it would last for 5 years. I'm not sure what. But the facts are before us. They need supplies. Let's give them the money for the supplies. We've shown that the governor has the money for the supplies. She should give it. She should give it yesterday. Get that off the table. Get the nurses who are doing, and the aides who are doing the first face-to-face care, everything that they need. Get the urgent projects done, but get some management and experts in there so we don't keep wasting money. And that's the other reason I don't want the receivership, is just because we have seen it. We're still paying a receiver to close the ORDOT dump. And every time we get close to removing the receiver, I mean, it gets extended. It's gone on for years now. And just because past governments did not do it, I'm not giving it up for the whole rest of us that we can't get that done. I have faith that if the governor and the lieutenant governor put their mind to it, they will do what the GMH needs. They've shown it in their letter. They know the money. They know where the money is more than we know where the money is. So money should never, ever be an issue for the Guam Memorial Hospital. Not with the governor's Organic Act powers over it. So the threat of receivership, I don't think that's going to worry her, because again, that will go on for years beyond her tenure in office, beyond any of our tenure in office. That will be a burden on the people of Guam beyond the burden that they currently face in building a new hospital, and beyond the burden that they currently face in fixing the current hospital. That's all. And if they don't want to manage it, then let's get somebody who wants to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On the amendment, are there any objections to the amendment? There is an objection. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Amendment fails. We'll take a brief recess.
Anyone else on the resolution? All right, if not, then Senator San Augustine? Oh, did you want to be recognized, Senator Shelton? Okay, so Senator San Augustine on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Very simple. Many statements have been made from the DOE, federal involvement. I don't know if you guys were senators then. I was the chairman of the board, and it was before my term. And if you want to talk about pointing fingers, it was during the Republican administrations almost 20 years ago when that started at DOE. Because when I got on board as the chairman of the Department of Education, I walked into that. When we want to talk about Simon Sanchez, the opportunity existed when they built 4 new schools. The administration could have built the 5th Northern School. They chose not to, because why? Resources weren't there. So leave that alone. Leave those two areas out. Want to talk about receivership? I don't know why anybody wants to even welcome receivership. We want to talk about the dump. I think it was on the news recently that the federal government, the court said that GovGuam should get about $50 million because of that 42 million. See, my colleague here mentioned it's 42 million because of the issue that the federal government were involved in the dump. There's many things we need to consider, folks. Receivership is something we will regret. And the speaker on her amendment that I supported, we don't seem to realize that asking for receivership, you don't need to ask. You know what? If the federal government feels that we don't have the ability to manage, they will come in and grant the receivership, especially if the agency is receiving federal funds. Don't ask for something that you can't afford to, because exactly what our speaker mentioned, it'll be beyond our time. We won't be, most of us won't be in the legislature when that receivership takes over GMH. Number two, everybody wants to complain. Gosh, priority is building a new hospital. Folks, in 2021, if you were a senator then and you voted for it, we passed a bill to appropriate money to build a new hospital, also on the condition that the current hospital has to be maintained. So the threat of saying that building new hospitals is not going to help, it does, because you have to do both. If you want to build a new hospital, you got to make sure that there's funding to maintain the current hospital. That was what that bill was all about. And then it was also mentioned about DOC. Oh, they got federal money. No, they don't. Whatever money they got. Also, during that term, we passed a bill to provide money to DOC to build a new DOC. They presented the whole plan. Nothing's happened. Am I going to blame the governor? No, I'm not. Because why? There's a director there. Unfortunately, that was my cousin. He passed away. It's a new director. I look forward to the oversight chair to ask him, when are you going to build at least half of a new prison? And then we can move on. When are we going to settle the issue of where? You know, because on the bill when we passed about the new GMH, we never talked about where. Because that was never our concern. It's making sure we provided the funding. So the funding exists. So folks, pass a resolution to say they're in dire need. You don't even need to pass a resolution for that. To say it calls for receivership, you don't need to make a phone call. Federal government will come when they believe they need to come. With that, I don't support this resolution because exactly what was mentioned by one of the co-sponsors. There's Bill 164. I've scheduled that to be heard Wednesday next week at 9 a.m. We'll find out what's going on with that. We'll identify from the administration how much is going. Is it really 20 million or is it going to be more? Is it really 30 million or is it going to be less? Then the question we should ask, it's not too much who should be in charge, it's what is going on the financial aspect of it. Because the appropriation, government appropriation, operation and appropriation only deals in what do you have? Three questions I always ask. Where you at? Where you want to go? And how can we help you? And that's how we should be focused on. Because pointing fingers doesn't do any good. We need to wake up, folks. Oh, Governor, you didn't do this. You have a bunch of money. Nothing new. She's had a bunch of money for the past 4 years. And GMH, we have to admit, we went through COVID, GMH survived. We went through Typhoon Mawar. We're all okay. And yes, when we asked, I know one of my colleagues brought it up, when we said, let's give some money for the LEAP, I'll give 5, or even the power rebate, we'll give so much, you give so much. There's a give and take. It's part of collaboration. It's part of coming together and finding a way to get some money out of that federal bucket and move us all forward. And we all benefit from that. Everyone on island benefit, to include each one of us. None of you can ever say you didn't benefit from the power rebate. None of you can say you didn't benefit from the liquid fuel tax. And everything else has been going on. And because it was mentioned by one of the authors that Bill 164 is the companion bill, there's now para na este resolution. Let's move forward. Come Wednesday, we hear everything. That's what we stress. Not intimidate people, but stress what is important and what we need to do for GMH, because this resolution doesn't do anything. And I stand against this resolution until we hear Bill 164 and we move on. Then hopefully we'll hear the next bill, which deal with the new hospital. Where it's going to be at is not my concern, but we know there's a funding mechanism. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator San Augustine. Anyone else on the resolution? If not, then the sponsor may close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And thank you to my colleagues, to you and my colleagues for the discussion on the resolution. Let me reiterate some of the concerns that were brought up. Primarily two. I know that there's some consternation with regards to the language about the federal receivership. But you know, we want to ensure that this resolution is all for naught, that this is not all for naught. You know, there's been concern that has been raised about, we know what the urgency is. How do we get the administration to know what the urgency is? Well, we put language in the bill to remind the administration that there are other alternatives that could be met if it gets any more dire than it is right now. Let's just think about it. Because it was brought up earlier that nothing's been done with the Guam Memorial Hospital. And they even say in the past two administrations, well, you know what, let me bring up the past three administrations. Because the amount of money that this administration is able to have to be able to fix not just corrections or public safety or public education, but in here is the healthcare system of our island. The amount of money that this administration has to be able to do this, continues to have to be able to do this, is much more than all three administrations combined have been able to get. So why do we need to have this conversation? There's going to be one thing I agree with the individuals who, with colleagues who oppose this resolution is, should this resolution have been needed? What else are we going to need to do to be able to put urgency to our hospital? There was a concern earlier that was brought up in as far as, and I recognize, we wanted 164 as a companion bill. That was voted down. I'm going to remind you. We had the opportunity to be able to put that on the floor now. But we didn't see the urgency in that. And we want to hold this off until after next week. How has that now become an emergency? It goes against what I believe is an emergency. It goes against what I believe is urgent. This is simply asking the governor, within her own powers, the abilities that we know that she has, to put an emphasis, to put urgency in her, in being able to take care of the woes of the hospital. I find it, as it was mentioned earlier, put this in and I'll put that in. Put this amount in, appropriate this amount, and I'll include that. When did we last ever have that kind of conversation with an administration because they had the ability to do this? We never had that. Nor did we ever have the opportunity, not even to come and to find money within the community to be able to take care of these matters because the funding exists. So this receivership question, first off, again, I'm going to remind, it's in the whereas clause. It states what could possibly happen. It states what we could, the next steps we could possibly take if this isn't given the attention that it needs. It doesn't state we're going to do this now. I hope that we doesn't have to get to that point. It shouldn't get to that point. And we're scared of it? And then the scare that the receivership is going to be a burden past this administration. Well, you know what? That's a legacy I'm sure she's going to appreciate that she's going to have. And to say that it is just as dire to talk about building a new hospital 5 years that will be ready 5 years down the road is just as important or is more important than dealing with the hospital woes today? Really? Tell that to the patient who is being bathed down with the utilization of paper towels and toilet paper. Tell that to the patient who's waiting to have his catheter removed or replaced, but they can't because they don't have the supply. Tell that to the patient who has to be comforted by rolling up a dirty linen to be used as a pillow. Tell that to the asthmatic patient who's concerned about getting treatment and having to walk their treatment in mold and mildew-filled hallways. Tell that to the ICU patient, okay, who's probably right now laying in bed, can't do anything because it's hot, because the air cons don't work. Tell that to them. Quite honestly, a vote against this resolution is basically telling the people of Guam that you don't see the urgency in fixing our hospital. That's what it comes down to. So your vote is telling them just that. So now it's your decision. So with that, Madam Chair, I'm going to once again ask my colleagues, let's put the urgency, let's put the importance of our healthcare system, of our hospital, as a priority. Let's show the people of Guam that we care. So I'm going to ask my colleagues for their vote on this resolution. So with that, Madam Chair, wait, 30-second recess.
30-second recess.
I doubt this is going to be a 30-second recess, so I just came on because I have a few things to say. First is I'm halfway happy and halfway upset that we stayed to cover this. Happy, of course, because of all the sound bites we were able to get out and the number of viewers who are interested in this, and that's always wonderful for Kandit. And you know, things did get exciting there with the sort of things that Senator said. It's not anything that we didn't already know ourselves, but it's nice to hear our own thoughts being repeated by our island's leaders. That being said, I'm upset that this entire charade, and I'll explain why I'm calling it a charade in just a second, consumed all of our time because it means that I wasn't able to put out more substantive things coming out of the CNMI to turn my attention to the Chamorro Land Trust issues and housing issues, and I'll publish a very meaningful editorial by Dr. Vince Akimoto, which I'll try to publish as soon as enough breaks happen between everything else that we've published. And this is why those things I think matter more than the coverage of this session, is because this session doesn't include Bill number 164. Jesse Lujan and Chris Duenas are absolutely right to be upset that while they believe in Resolution 215, it is completely incomplete, to say the least. I would say innocuous, meaningless, without Bill 164, which provides the, is it supposed to be $30 million appropriation, some sort of appropriation to help GMH, but why I think it's even more upsetting that we're in a position, or we're in a situation where we're discussing a resolution which has no weight of law. It is just a statement from the legislature to the governor of Guam to recognize that there are emergency conditions. Chris Barnett is right. There is no such thing in Guam law as an extreme emergency. There is something called a state of emergency, and if I'm not mistaken, all it does is allows the governor to use emergency procurement powers up to $500,000 for each state of emergency, and she's limited to executing a state of emergency to one every 30 days, if I'm not mistaken, if the law has remained since the time that I was in Adelup. So this is, for lack of a better term, political showmanship. Important showmanship, important messaging to get the message staying in the public that there is a crisis at GMH, yes. But without that substantive appropriation from the legislature, the substantive deposit of $20 million by the governor in ARPA funds over to GMH to pay vendor payables and to make physical plant fixes to GMH, this resolution is a nothing burger. I agree with it. I agree with everything it says. I agree with almost everything that the senators had to say. I was very, I loved when Therese Terlahi said, and I didn't make a meme about this yet because honestly, I'm tired. We have been working nonstop since Friday. I was not supposed to work today. I haven't gone to the gym yet. We do not get paid overtime to do any of this stuff. In fact, sometimes we don't even get paid. This is like 100% public service right now. So Therese Terlahi said, if we cannot run our hospital, our political status is dead on arrival. And for someone like Therese Terlahi to say that, that means a lot. So anyway, the senators had a bunch of these sound bites that I loved. Can we put up the first? What's the first one that we've got? I didn't proofread one of them and made a major mistake. So Will Parkinson says the problems with GMH are the legislature's fault. Let's not play pin the tail on someone else. The Republican solution has been the same thing they've been doing for decades and have been failing. That pissed off the Republicans. They were like, what? We've had Democrats for the last 5 years, and the Republicans are right. But also, Will Parkinson's kind of right, too. You know, in Felix Camacho's day, GMH made a marked improvement. Remember, Mike Cruz was the lieutenant governor in the second term, and he's a medical doctor. He was the previous medical director of GMH. How's the legislature, by the way? Are they back in session? We'll hear him. Okay. He was the medical director before he was a senator, before he was lieutenant governor. And he managed to get GMH accredited for the first time at that time in 20 years. And then accreditation was lost, ironically, when Lulian Guerrero was chairwoman of the hospital board of trustees in the first year of the Calvo administration. Eddie Calvo so the financial situation began to deteriorate significantly at GMH during the Calvo administration because of the markedly increasing prices of pharmaceuticals and standard prices for medical care. And without a rebasing of Medicare rates through what's called TEFRA rebasing, GMH was always in a losing situation. Plus, there was this one insurance company that continues to this day to fight every way to paying what they should be paying to GMH, right? Reimbursing to GMH. All of these things, plus the people who don't pay, the people who use GMH as their primary care provider, all these things sort of conspire to place us in the situation we're at now. Eddie Calvo tried very hard. GMH was a big priority to Eddie Calvo, especially in his second term, where, if you remember, first it was Judy Wampat who was the speaker, and then B.J. Cruz was the speaker after her, and then in I think the last few months of Eddie Calvo's term, Tina Mooney Barnes was the speaker. Are they back?
We're going to
let's go back to the legislature.
Recess tonight until 9:30 in the morning. Recess until 9:30.
Okay, so let's just come back to us. So in Eddie Calvo's last term, he had this entire task force that did a lot of work to build a new GMH. This is not a new thing. This whole let's rebuild GMH thing is not a new discussion under the Lulian Guerrero administration. This began under the Calvo administration. And the Democrats at the time, this has always been a Democrat versus Republican sort of thing. This is where a lot of these problems are. And a lot of the things that these senators are saying now and the administration is saying now are the same things that the senators and the administration said during the Calvo administration. In fact, I was reminded that Senator Frank Uggan Jr. back in the day said, let's have federal receivership of GMH. So this idea of federal receivership, while it's a Republican idea now, was a Democrat idea just a few years ago during a Republican administration, when the Republican administration was trying to get the legislature to provide the funding to build a new hospital. And at the time, the price tag was $300 to $400 million. Now, the price tag is more than $1 billion. And it's because we waited all these years, not just because the price of construction has gone up, but the price of financing has gone up. The bond market just a couple of years ago was in its most favorable position. Now, it is not. It is, as Mike St. Nicholas said, it is not a good time to go to the bond market to do any borrowing. And it's all this waiting. And you know, Governor Lulian Guerrero is right to be upset that the legislature has not gotten on board with the building of a new hospital. And the legislature is right to say, we're not against building a new hospital, but along the way, the Republicans and the Democrats, the administration and the legislature, no matter what party is in charge of what, can never get along to produce something that everyone is going to get along with. Can you imagine if Governor Lulian Guerrero 2 years ago was like, you know what, I don't think we're going to be able to get the majority of senators or the public or the doctors to agree that we should build a hospital in bum freak Manilao heading into Jigo. So gosh, you know, we have this Oka Point property, we may as well just use it. Might as well. Hashtag might as well. Just build this darn thing at Oka Point. Maybe even build it up or something. Have one of those swirling parking garages so everyone can park, right? If just a couple of years ago the governor was willing to compromise on that, I don't know that any senator would have successfully been able to poo-poo the financing of a new hospital at favorable market rates for financing of a hospital. We would probably be in the middle of the design phase or at the end of the design phase for that construction of that hospital and about to enter a groundbreaking right now. And then maybe in like 3 years or something, we would have a ribbon cutting. It would still be after Lulian Guerrero's term, but she would definitely get all the credit for it. And the senators would be happy. And you know what? Things would work on Guam. But this is Guam, where great ideas go to die and we pioneer stupidity. And so here we are with the same exact problems that we've been talking about since the Calvo administration. And senators wasting our time grandstanding about the same exact problems we've been talking about since the Calvo administration, and this charade from both Adelup and the senators. And yeah, I guess everybody is up in arms about the situation at GMH. Well, great. Do something. Do something. We have this idea of a federal receivership. I don't know if this is incompetence on the part of senators or if they are this is just part of the charade, but you know how a federal receivership happens? Someone files a suit over at the U.S. District Court of Guam asking for an injunction against the government of Guam and its management of Guam Memorial Hospital because A, B, C, D, whatever. And then all of these hearings happen and all this evidence is presented before the court. And then the court, probably an off-island judge like we had in the tax refund case and the or.dump consent decree and the Department of Justice consent decree for DOC and the permanent injunction with Guam Waterworks Authority, some federal judge will issue a permanent injunction or a consent decree, and from that injunction or consent decree, assign a federal receiver to Guam Memorial Hospital. So, if the senators want a federal receivership, one of them needs to go file a civil suit at the U.S. District Court of Guam. Otherwise, this is just political grandstanding. And not just on the part of senators, but also Adelup. You know what I think was so stupid of Adelup today? Adelup should have told Will Parkinson, shut your mouth, Will Parkinson. Do not stand in the way of Bill 164. That's going to give GMH, which we run, $30 million to help GMH. And not only, so that would be the practical, like good-natured side of the political process to allow Bill 164 to pass, but not only would that have been good-natured and the right thing to do, it would politically, now if anyone had their thinking caps on over at Adelup's political strategy department, politically, it would have taken the mess away from Adelup's footstep. Now, this legislature is going to pass Resolution 215 and say every bad thing that they want to say against the governor without a companion solution. And from now until that companion solution gets to Adelup, the senators are going to be able politically and strategically to blame everything on the governor and say there's nothing that's moving with GMH because there's not this additional $30 million from Bill 164. So I have no idea why Adelup sent Will Parkinson to object to placing Bill 164 on the agenda today. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And it's probably because they can't get their freaking fists out of their asses in time to do something right, not just for the people, but for themselves. Rant over. Good night. Peace be with you all. We'll see you at 9:30 tomorrow morning, where I hope we are not wasting more of our time, because I'd like to work out in the morning, but you know what? Good night.